Range Diaries, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Guys, welcome to the Waypoint Shooting Show Range Diaries edition. I'm here sitting down with my friend Chris. Say what's up.
What's up?
All right, we just got back from the range here in Michigan. What temperature was it today?
It got to like a balmy, summery feeling, 48 degrees.
48 degrees, and we were outside with snow on the ground, eager to shoot again after not shooting at all from Nationals, right?
Yeah, it's been since the 28th, I think, of October since we picked up a gun and tried to align some sights.
Which was difficult at first.
It was difficult the first few runs. Yeah.
And surprisingly, my 9mm Shadow 2 with factory ammo felt like I was shooting 45 ACP.
Ooh.
It was cold out, couldn't grab the gun. It was a rough experience. But I did go 1 for 1 on the plate rack the first go. So
something that I didn't do the entire time we shot today.
Hey, that's okay. You're shooting the most expensive gun in the group, so it's all right.
It should just shoot those things, but, still, there's those fundamental things.
So the reason why we wanted to do this is just want to do a very informal, let's talk about our experiences shooting today. Sometimes we're shooting with intent, sometimes we're not. Sometimes it can be valuable just to screw around with and play games. So Chris, just kind of tell me what you wanted to get out of today and what your experience was with just shooting.
Just getting out today, I mean, we get turned upside down here in northern Midwest states because, our season comes to an end basically in October.
Yeah.
So after Nationals, took three weeks, maybe a month off, and now it's, getting the itch again, wanting to train, picking up the things that I was doing wrong during the season that I could correct and push myself towards progress for next year. And today it was just, friends getting out on the range, and, we've got the full range at our disposal with steel set up and any targets that we want. So it was really just to get a feel back and, kind of play around and not be worried about having it affect a match that's coming up.
And I think that says something that a lot of people forget sometimes. You can certainly go to either end of the spectrum, but today there was no game plan, right. No intent, no hit factor, timer. It was just us screwing around and having fun, which I think can be valuable in the mid-season if you're burnout, but definitely in the off-season. Like we brought out SBRs as suppressors, and we never shoot for fun like
never.
That. Ever. But there's value in that, I
think. It's crazy, actually, because going through the safe and looking at some of the things that I have that I just never shoot because it's not my competition rig. It's not the thing that I'm trying so hard to be, good at or whatever that means, right? When we initially got into this, it was just because we really liked the act of shooting. It's fun.
Exactly.
And it was good to get back to that because then your instincts are able to kick back in and you don't isolate things that become problematic. You just let it fly, or like Proctor would say, let it do.
Just let it do, baby. I think it's very mentally healthy every once in a while just to shoot like that. Now, that being said, I think we're both in agreement. If we were preparing for some type of national match or something we were putting money into, our next range session would probably be a little bit more focused with more accountability.
It would be more focused. We had friends out today, and we basically set up a little mock 2-position stage that you could engage either from left to right or right to left with or without a reload, depending on how you were feeling with your accuracy. Normally, I would never set up a mini stage to train. It's always an isolated, specific thing that I wanted to focus on, whether it's just moving in or out of positions, doing classifier style stand and shoot, fundamentals. So yeah, it's one of those things that you can get out there and you can just really not have a battle plan, and it can be beneficial because it can keep you loose. But generally during the season, before a major match, I'm picking one thing to work on for that hour that I'm at the range, and then leaving before I get burnt out of that.
I'd say today was like a dudes having fun on the range, golfing with guns session.
Totally.
I mean,
and it was healthy.
It was.
Yeah.
And guys, it's not like we were just doing mag dumps. We were trying things, but right. we were playing around with weirdo stuff that you normally wouldn't do in a practice session. For example, the stage was set up so that you had falling steel, a plate rack, and then lots of partial cardboard. So it was a healthy mix that we could play around with a lot.
Right.
And you could shoot it, obviously, an infinite number of ways. To be kind of more specific, you could stand and shoot all the steel from a certain position, or you could elect to try to pull some weirdo rock star stuff where you maybe try to shoot the plate rack on the moon.
Tried it.
Okay, or you try to shoot the whole thing without having to reload. And
right.
How many times did the dudes with high cap guns miss their last shot because they didn't count rounds?
Every single time.
Every single time. And me as a production shooter, shooting a production gun at least today, I reloaded in between positions every single time.
Yeah, and you had ammo to shoot at things.
Exactly. Now, there was a bunch of times where I played with things that I wouldn't do in a match setting if it was all on the line.
Right.
But what I found out, what I think is really interesting, and I alluded to this in the beginning of the practice session, I'm pretty sure the best way to shoot this is to just make your hits. Kind of as an inside joke, shooting it the best instead of trying weirdo shit is probably going to...
It yields the best results every time.
It yields the best results. To quantify this, guys, without the first couple of runs being in there as like cold outliers, stage times were probably around 16 to 15 seconds for me.
Right.
And when I just plugged into the gun, grabbed onto it hard, and fundamentally shot it well, like 13 to 14 seconds.
Yeah, without a miss. Pretty simple.
Like you would expect, right? But Chris, I want you to talk about this a little bit more. How does it feel sometimes just to be like, I'm going to see what happens when I try to shoot a plate rack on the move or shoot this out of position? How does that make you feel? How does that make you change your training?
I mean, this is the thing that when we get into talking more about training, that exact thing that Kyle is alluding to is exactly what I need to do to get out of where I am and into where I can be. Today, it felt great. It felt like I felt freedom run through my veins. It was like, when we pick up the guns for the first time to shoot the sport of USPSA, we do it because we want to move fast and we want to execute difficult shots and make it look sporty.
Gotta go fast, baby.
Yeah, and in matches is not the proper time to try that stuff out. So if you're not trying stuff in training, like today, I exited a position after a plate rack on falling steel. Exited hard, missed it.
Yeah.
Did that steel falling dance, came back and hit it. And it's not a thing I would ever do in a match, but I wanted to push it and see what would happen. Is this something that if it works, it's good? What level of sight picture do I need? Can I point shoot this? I did the same thing trying to shoot a plate rack at 12 yards on the move, and it actually worked out pretty well for the first...
Surprisingly so.
3 or 4 plates. I think 4 of them went down.
They did 4. It was 1 for 1, and then you started missing.
And then I started missing, and then I started aiming, and so... But you're never going to learn these things unless you go out there and push it during practice.
It's valuable playtime.
Valuable playtime. And I wasn't worried about, the ammo falling on the ground and picking up brass later and how much money that was going to cost me and blah. I just didn't think about that. You just go shoot, and you kind of just take the parameters of the concept of what you're doing off and just let it happen. You can learn a lot more from that than constraining yourself into what you think needs to happen and staying within a zone. Now, obviously, we might get back there, like you said.
Yeah.
You apply the real fundamentals and you just shoot it the best way possible. But you came back to that after experimenting a little bit, and it helps you learn, it helps you see things, it helps you reaffirm why you train.
And I'm not sure what other people call this, but I call it shooter's intuition. And what I mean by that is based on your experience gained through doing stuff like this all the time, okay, collecting all of those experiences, because what do they say? Experience is failure learned after the fact,
right?
Or something to that regard. What I'm saying is you're going to develop the ability to understand what you can and cannot get away with at a match or when it counts or game time or whatever you want to call it by doing stuff that you wouldn't think is acceptable otherwise in an environment where you don't have the leisure or opportunity to try weirdo shit.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. It's so knowing about the doubles drill that Ben Steger talks about, knowing the distances that you can just pull the trigger twice, knowing where your hits are going to go by adjusting your grip pressure and your how loose or how tight your sight alignment needs to be. Today in practice, since I had played with that drill a little bit, we're at 12 to 15 yards on some of these partials. Tuxedo, no shoots on below, diagonal hardcover, and I wasn't scared of them. Yeah. I pulled the trigger the same way I would if it was an open target, aiming in the right spot, and every time they went there. So loosening up a little bit and being able to just let it fly and knowing the proof of concept through practice.
Yeah.
And knowing what I can do when I need to go onto these different partial targets or different distance targets. It's priceless, honestly. If you don't go and screw around and find out what you're capable of, what your equipment's capable of, you're doing yourself a disservice when it comes to how to shoot matches. And I know because I spent this whole year shooting a certain pace. And it was a good pace for where I am.
Yes.
But it's not going to help me go where I want to go.
And to quantify that statement a little bit more, I think Chris, in my opinion, did the right thing this year. He trained for what he knew his accomplishable skill level was, and for his percentage, his division, his goals. He trained smartly. He didn't try to pull a rabbit out of a hat. And I believe he took the right approach to his nationals performance this year. And then, like he just said, now that he's done that, now that he's kind of lived within his parameters,
right,
he's going to start challenging himself through these types of practicing sessions and other more focused practice sessions to make that quantum leap. And I don't mean that quite figuratively. I mean it literally. You're going to jump up like that.
It's. I think we're going to get into this in one of these, probably the next episode we record. But the B class division in USPSA is one that generally people always stay in.
I stayed in there for 2 years.
Right. You either sandbag in there purposefully, or you stay in there because sorry, buddy. or you get stuck in there because you don't know how to practice the right way to get out of it. You've got people in that division that are basically just right above C class, hovering at that 60% line. But then you've got people right at the high 70s, 73 to 74.9% that are right there at low A class. Anyone within that range can home run hit and pull out a master class run if they're going for it like hero or zero.
Yes.
If you play it conservative and you stay within your means, though, you're always going to wind up being in like that mid-60s range because you don't take risks in practice. B classes, so we're talking the 15% fluctuation in here.
Yeah.
I think that's why most people get stuck there, because you have the most talented, inconsistent shooters, and then you also have the most like inconsistent, low. It's one of those strange things. You could be C class still. You're good at speed, but you just don't know how to aim the gun properly. You don't know how to exit or enter positions. Those things you haven't become aware of yet. But you could have M class to GM class gun handling skills, be able to do sub-second reloads, but you just don't know how to move. And you're just kind of stuck in this little limbo.
And I forgot who said it before, but not to get too deep into this subject, but I think it warrants talking about right now because it's directly applicable to what we just said before this. That B class zone there's something about that percentile of skill level where you can, let's simplify things, be fast and inaccurate, or accurate and not fast. For example, I was in B class at Nationals last year.
Yep.
I was a very accurate, very smooth, never really made any mistakes shooter. Hell, I was the most accurate shooter at Nationals last year.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I placed well because I was slow.
Right.
So you could be that guy who is all alphas all the time, never drops penalties, never misses a reload, but you're just kind of
It's right there in the middle coasting.
Or you could be like one of our other friends named Ben who just sends it.
Send it.
And every once in a while he'll hang him up and, it'll happen.
The baseball analogy would be he goes up there looking to hit a home run.
Yeah.
And if he strikes out, at least he was trying to hit a home run.
So then the question becomes, how do I get out of B class?
Right.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about in another episode, but let's go back to what we're talking about today. One thing, you said something that made me think about people getting locked in a box with live fire or dry fire.
Right.
And Chris said a sentence or a paragraph earlier, we didn't write, but
I said it.
He was talking about having that shooter's intuition of just shooting the speed which he thought he could accomplish based on what he loosely saw through the sights.
Right.
I'm not trying to make a statement here that dry fire is not important and not valuable. However, if all you do is dry fire, I'm not here to poo-poo dry fire, but what I'm saying is you need to get out and live fire, shoot the gun to get those experiences, to know. Because in dry fire, you can see the sights very clearly, and based on how much you're paying attention to them, how much caffeine you have, what's the lighting like in the room, and how honest you are with yourself, you may have a false perception of
your
what you can. Yeah. And the gun's not recoiling, and it's not 40 degrees out, and your fingers can't move.
There's more to me. And take this from a B-class shooter's perspective, right? I spent the whole winter last year dry firing, and I got really, really good at gun handling, to the point now where I can train myself up in most basic gun handling. We're talking about draws, reloads, just handling your magazines, transitions, aligning the sights. I can nail that stuff down in a week of dry fire before a match now, and feel like I'm at a really, really high level for the part times in the dry fire reloaded book. That's not the problem.
No.
If you hit those speeds all the time in dry fire, but you don't ever live fire, you become really stagnant in the way that you handle speed and time. It's just, I was only shooting at one pace because that was the pace that I dry fired at. I had no feel for what the sights did during recoil, or what I could get away with at certain distances. Those are the things that only live fire is going to simulate for you. And it's where I failed a lot this year during training. I just didn't get out and live fire and take enough chances to play and find out what I could do. I also wasn't ready yet to understand this concept, which is part of the journey. And, you know,
you can listen to Jimmy, but do you hear Jimmy?
Do you hear him? Right. Is that soul speaking to you?
And this is great because we're going to talk about this when we do our nationals review and we talk about what we're good at and what we're bad at. But I think Chris has a very accurate assessment of what his challenges are and what his issues are right now. And the best way I can describe Chris's shooting, to me, when I watched him this year at nationals, it looked like you took a volume knob and you stuck it in one spot. Right. It didn't get any louder or any quieter.
It was just right there.
It was right there. And that's okay because it made him a very consistent performer and he did well within his bracket. And what I mean by bracket is division and class combined.
Right.
Okay, but now he's recognizing that we need to turn that volume knob up.
Yeah, there's well, in watching other people progress, all the people that I follow in USPSA or shoot with, like Kyle, they took big steps at a certain point. And that big step came when they realized you have to introduce speed and aggression, but keep your accuracy where it is, if not get it better.
Oh man, yeah, we'll talk about this in more detail later, but that's what happened to me last year. So when I was in B class and I made an immediate jump to M. It's not like I went to A or anything like that. And what it was is, like you guys heard me talk about earlier, I was accurate, I was smooth and slow. I shot with a friend of mine, shout out Josh, what's up? And he would constantly kick my butt at local matches because he was just going so much faster than I was. And I was like, he misses every once in a while, but he still hangs them up pretty good. He's a solid shooter. But he was going so much faster than I was that he was wiping the floor with me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, that's how fast you need to shoot?
Right.
And then I made that quantum leap that I was talking about, what Chris is about to do, hopefully.
Yeah, trying. Totally.
Let's bring it all back down now today and talk about our experiences today. Let's talk about valuable playtime again in a little bit more detail. We did something at the end of our range session today that I loved that's really fun. We did player versus player plate rack races. So, yep. Chris, tell me about that.
I mean, we get ourselves all psyched up to shoot these stages where it's just us against the stage designer, us against the timer, us against the cardboard that doesn't shoot back, you know? And it really, it gets kind of self-serving, right? It gets kind of boring in a sense. Yeah. But we had 2 plate racks set up at the bay that we were training on at the local range. And why not just go head to head?
Yeah.
1 person time, 2 people up on the line, about 12 yards away on a plate rack. And whoever finishes first is the winner. And then we'll cycle in the other person and we'll keep going until someone's clearly wins more than the other. And it was awesome because it's a different level of competition that you're shooting right against a person, and it mixes it up, and it exhilarates you again to get back to the reason why we're here doing this in the first place, which is to have fun.
Yes.
To shoot and have fun, right?
It was so much fun, and it's something that I miss. I used to be a class junkie, and I still am, and oftentimes in shooting classes, at least in the area that I trained in and with the trainers that I trained with, you would have every once in a while, maybe once or twice a class, you'd have like a shoot-off.
Right.
And that shoot-off, not only does it give you another layer of simulated pressure, it does things to you that you shooting a drill or stage will never do. For example, when I was trying to shoot my plate rack, I had to fight the urge so hardcore not to look at what the other guy was doing. And I can't tell you how many times, like I can usually clean a plate rack and not miss usually.
Right.
I missed every single time because I was listening and hearing to the other guy's hits. So it almost gives you another level or layer of mental discipline training that you don't get when you're just facing downrange at a stage and no one else is doing anything next to you.
Right. It's a whole different stimuli, and that's good. And we see shoot-offs at the end of World Shoot and things like that. It would be super cool, I think, to introduce this kind of stimulus and this kind of competition.
Like Pro-Am style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sea of Steel out there. Equidistant, 2 shooters going for it. It could be in the middle of the match. It could be at the end. Just get after it. Like loosen up a little bit.
I would like to see that injected back into the USPSA culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of it just always being, it becomes kind of stale with the whole 32 round stage, you know, being a limited shooter. I'm going to reload one time and it's going to be on the biggest movement and I'm going to go over here and shoot these things. You know, just mix it up and injecting that fun, which there was a lot of stages at this year's Nationals that had some really good potential, a lot of classifiers that we enjoyed, and you guys are going to hear all about it when we talk about that in our Nationals episode.
Exactly. So appreciate you guys listening to the Waypoint Range Diaries right here. So let us know I tell you what, you tell me about your latest range experience. Did you shoot with friends? Did you shoot by yourself? Is it the off season where you live? Is it too freaking cold to shoot? Or are you one of those people where it's actually the nicest time of the year to shoot right now?
Could be down south.
So drop us a line, comment down below, or whatever you guys want to do, and let's get some discussion rolling on your range diaries. What do you do? Do you have friends that you can shoot with, or are you just like, you know, forever alone?
Right. Right. Do you have questions about how you should be training and what it is and how it's applicable to what kind of shooting you're doing out there? These are great conversational pieces and things that we should be talking about more often.
Exactly, and neither Chris and I are trying to come at this format as like a panel of experts. We just want to share with you our journey in shooting.
Totally.
So share with us your journey in shooting. That's all I got, Chris. You got anything else to say?
Good.
All right, we will catch you guys next time on the Waypoint Range Diaries.